Hi, it's Penny here, and in this video I'm going to be picking the best book that I read in 2024. So basically what I do every month is I do a book battle where I battle every book that I've read during the month against each other until I come up with the best book of the month. And in this video we're going to basically take each one of those best books of the month and battle them against each other until we come up with the best book of the year. Now, there are a lot of good books on this list, so this could be some very hard decisions. We're going to start by basically doing battles of 3 to determine the best book of each quarter, and then I guess we'll decide the best book of each half year and then the best book of the year. That's how we're going to do it. So, the first quarter we have Snowglass Apples by Neil Gaiman and Colleen Doran, up against The Cursed Princess Club by Lambcat, up against Six of the Dusk by Brandon Sanderson. So weirdly, the first quarter seems to have been all about graphic novels and short things. So firstly, we have Snowglass Apples, which is a Snow White retelling, but told from the perspective of the stepmother. And the art throughout this is absolutely beautiful, and it does get incredibly dark in parts. It's definitely quite a twisted retelling of the Snow White story, but I really loved it. And of course it's a quick read, so if that sounds interesting, I would give it a go. Then as well in February we have The Cursed Princess Club by Lambcat. I'm not actually sure what this is really representing in terms of my original book battle, but I think for me, I'm just going to have it represent the whole series because I initially read this via webtoon, and then as I read through that webtoon, I marked the books that are now being made as read, even though I don't think the way that I mapped the episodes I read to the books is quite right, because I don't actually think the whole thing's been released as books yet. Regardless, this is initially a really cute story. Basically, we're following the 3 pastel princesses who have been betrothed to marry the 3 plaid princes, but while the older 2 sisters are kind of your more classical princesses who can sing to birds and have their birds do their hair and, you know, make flowers grow around them, the 3rd princess is one with green skin, green hair. When we first meet her, she has a possum on her head. She has like pointy teeth. And when the youngest plaid prince discovers this is who he's betrothed to, he is like, but she's ugly. And when Gwendolyn hears this, she gets very upset. She goes off into the forest where she meets the Cursed Princess Club, which is basically a bunch of different princesses with different curses that they haven't been able to cure. And Gwendolyn really forms a friendship with this Cursed Princess Club. And while that all sounds like very cute and very silly, and it is, there's also like quite a lot of complexity and quite a lot going on in this series. I really liked so many of the messages, like so many wholesome messages, but also so many like laugh out loud moments. I really appreciated how at the end so many things that had just seemed like silly jokes in the beginning actually ended up being really important to the plot. And there were some like quite well done twists and turns along the way. And like while I was reading this, I would always tell myself I could just read to the end of the episode, and then quite often I would not be able to stop myself from reading the next episode as well, because I just had to know what was going to happen. And I loved all the characters in this series so much. Then in March we have Six of the Dusk by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a novella in his bigger Cosmere, set on this planet, or more specifically set on an island where there are these birds that grant people magical powers, and we're following this trapper out on this island who kind of discovers something that is going to lead to like a big change to his world and his culture. It's quite a short story, and it's mostly about him just kind of trying to survive, but also how he's going to face these bigger changes in the world. I did particularly like the magical birds, but I actually think this is only on the list because I didn't read anything better in March. This wasn't an absolute favourite for me, but it was still very well written. So if we're doing a battle of the books from Q1, we'll take away Six of the Dusk first because, as I said, I think it's there more just from the way things worked out rather than it being an absolute favourite. And then we're left with our 2 graphics, and I will also take away Snowglass Apples because even though I love the art and I love the story, it's still pretty short and there's not that much to it. Whereas Cursed Princess Club, I love so much about that, and there is so much to it, and I will never stop recommending Cursed Princess Club to people. So that's going to be the best book of Q1. Then for Q2 we have Shaman's Crossing by Robin Hobb up against Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells, up against Renegade's Magic by Robin Hobb. So, two of the books in this battle are books from the Soldier Son trilogy, and honestly, I'm questioning past me and why she didn't put that middle book as the best book of May. I bet it was a hard decision. But let me tell you about Shaman's Crossing and Renegade's Magic kind of together, since they are from the same series. So these are both from the Soldier Son trilogy, which is set in this like alternate colonial America. We're following this young boy named Navarre, like with the Fitz books in the realm of the Elderlings. We're following Navarre from when he's quite a young boy, and he is the second son, which in this world means he's a soldier son and kind of destined to become a soldier. And he's also a soldier son of a soldier son, which means his father has quite a lot of expectations of him. And Navarre really wants nothing more than to be a good soldier son. However, a lot of things are in his way. So as I said, colonial America, so we have the native people of this land that Navarre's people are kind of come in and started taking over from. And the reason why they've been so successful is because these native people, their magic doesn't work when there's iron around. And of course, Navarre's people have come in with swords and guns, and as a result have kind of like wiped out the native people. Although there's actually two groups of native people, one who are more obviously aggressive and another group that's a little bit more mysterious, and there's kind of a bigger conflict already at play between those two native peoples. And Navarre kind of gets wrapped up in the middle of that and kind of pulled into the magic of the world in a way that like completely disrupts both his life and like everyone in this world's life. And as you would expect from Robin Hobb, everything is very tragic and awful. But I also really love the way that Robin Hobb kind of linked in the themes of the story to the plot and everything else that was going on in this world. The story is very slow and character focused, again, as you would expect from Robin Hobb. And Navarre can be a little bit insufferable in that he always just wants to do what's right, but still makes terrible decisions over and over. But also there's a big part in this book where he really just has no control of what's happening to him. And some of that was just really difficult to read. Like, I had such an emotional journey following along with Navarre's story. And as I said, I also really love the themes that Robin Hobb was looking at. And I just love both these books. And I love the middle book too. And I don't know why it's not in this list. Because did I like Rogue Protocol more? I mean, that's what I said, but did I? Anyway, Rogue Protocol is the book we have for May. Rogue Protocol is the third book, I think, or the second book. Should I check this? Hang on. The third book. So Rogue Protocol is the third book in the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. So this is a series all about Murderbot, who's the security bot, kind of like a bot with some kind of organic parts, but they hate dealing with humans, even though their job is security and looking after humans. And they've hacked their governor module, so a lot of these bots have governor modules that basically force them to make certain decisions. But Murderbot has hacked theirs because they didn't like the decisions it was making. And also, they really just wanted to be able to watch TV. So the Murderbot Diaries are mostly Murderbot having to do their job, but also figuring out what decisions they want to make now that they do have a little bit of freedom to make decisions. And also just struggling to deal with humans and emotions and all those kind of things. So I really love this series. And particularly, I remember Rogue Protocol ended up at the top of the list because there is another bot that we get to meet, and I really love them. And I loved the relationship between the two bots and some of the questions it was kind of investigating related to AI. I'm actually doubting my memory now. Is Rogue Protocol the one with Mickey? I mean, that would make sense because there was also another bot called Mickey, and I love Mickey. And I can't say anything about it without spoilers, but that part of the story was emotional. So was this that one? I can't tell from the synopsis online. But anyway, either way, I love Murderbot, so I guess that's why it made it onto this list. If I am putting these three up against each other though, I just don't think Murderbot was as impactful for me as the Soldier Son trilogy. So I think we're going to take away Rogue Protocol, and then I have to decide whether I want to pick the first book from the Soldier Son trilogy or the last book. I think we're going to go with the first one, just because I did have a few qualms about the way the series wrapped up. So we're going to put Shaman's Crossing as the best book of Q2. So then, for Q3, we have The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton, up against Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells, up against 17 Years Later by J.P. Pomare. So firstly, we have The Last Murder at the End of the World. This is a post-apocalyptic murder mystery. Basically, something happened where the whole world ended up covered in this fog that will eat you or something. So the only survivors are on this single island. The island is run by 3 scientists who lived before the apocalypse, and then everybody else on the island has been born since then. And as well, this island is run by an AI security system that's able to read everybody's minds. So the story is actually being told from the AI's perspective, but each chapter they're giving you the insight into a particular character's mind. So you feel like you're getting the perspective of different characters throughout the book, but you're actually getting the AI's perspective of their perspective. And there will be little inserts where the AI lets you know that they kind of have a bigger knowledge of what's actually happening. So right from the beginning of the book, you do know that there is going to be a murder. I was surprised it doesn't actually happen till some way into the book, but you know it's coming. And then once this person is murdered, things conspire so that the characters now need to discover who did the murder, who committed the murder, and they have to do it within a limited time, or otherwise this AI security system is going to just let the fog onto the island. But as well, the AI security system has wiped everybody's memory of the night that the murder happened. So while these characters are investigating the murder, they don't actually know whether it might have been them that was responsible. And I just really loved the way that this book series kind of gave you so many different little mysteries to discover and figure out. And every time you would get some answers about what was going on, there would be even more questions raised. And I just found the whole book so intriguing. Now, I will admit this is one I've seen hasn't necessarily gotten very good reviews, but I think if maybe you go into it kind of expecting more of a cozy murder mystery with some weird sci-fi stuff on the side, that maybe that would be the right expectations to go in with. Then for August, we have another Murderbot book, and that is Fugitive Telemetry. This is another one where I'm kind of just thinking maybe the books weren't that great that month, the ones that I picked up, because Fugitive Telemetry was good, but again, not amazing. Maybe I'm just misremembering my whole Murderbot experience. I do really like that series. I think it's a lot of fun. In Fugitive Telemetry, Murderbot is basically taking on a bit of a security job where they have to solve a murder mystery and kind of trying to build some kind of relationship with certain humans, even though they don't really want to talk to humans at all. I remember with Fugitive Telemetry having the criticism that there weren't quite enough bots. There is a bot element to the story, but it doesn't really come into play till quite late in the story. But this was a really fun little murder mystery, but little is the key word because it is quite short. So fun and interesting, but not much to it. Then for September we have 17 Years Later, and I think this is the only book on the list that isn't fantasy or sci-fi. So J.P. Pomare is a New Zealand author, although he lives in Australia now, but let's pretend that's not true. And I really love the way that he writes mystery thrillers. I think it's just the right balance for me between mystery and thrills. So in this one, we're following this podcaster, an Australian podcaster actually, and she's decided to come to New Zealand to investigate this murder that happened sometime in the past, not a real murder, a fictional murder, but for her, it's real. Am I making sense? Probably not. Anyway, this podcaster is investigating this murder that happened where this very rich British family had come to live in kind of Cambridge, New Zealand, which is a little bit middle of nowhere-ish, but they have this big fancy house. And then what happened is they all got stabbed and died. And then their chef, this Maori guy, was put in jail for that murder. But there's always been a question about whether he really got a fair trial. So this podcaster has decided to come and investigate the situation. So we're getting both her investigation of what's happening, and then she also kind of pulls in the psychologist to help with the investigation. And I really like the way those two plot lines work together to have you discover things that were really going to affect the other character and put them in a dangerous situation, which added to that thrilling aspect of the mystery. As well, you're getting the original story of this Maori guy going to work as a chef for this family, but it's him having written the story, and so once you figure that out, you know that you can't necessarily trust everything that he's written down. And once again, I just love the way that that part of the story was woven together, like the way all the different plot threads came together to reveal the mystery to you. I found it very satisfying, and I always think J.P. Pomare does such a great job of like making me think it's going to be one thing and then it's actually something else. Like there's always so many twists. And even if I guess them, they're still done in a way that's incredibly satisfying. Like, I don't read that many thrillers lately, mystery thrillers, because I'm often disappointed in them. Like, I know there are ones out there that I could like, but I find it really hard to find them. But J.P. Pomare is always very reliable for my kind of taste in a mystery thriller. So, if I'm putting these 3 books up against each other, I guess we'll take away Fugitive Telemetry first, because as I said, I'm not quite sure why it's even on the list. Like, I liked it, but I don't think it's quite at the same level. Then we have a hard decision. I mean, both of these are murder mysteries, so they should be more comparable than some books, but one's a sci-fi murder mystery, so it's more about the sci-fi, and the other one was more about the mystery. My gut feeling is to go with the sci-fi, but I think maybe I'm just thinking that because it's a sci-fi, and I don't think that's fair. I need a better reason. What did I actually rate these? Oh, I rated them the same. I honestly can't decide because I liked both of these the same. Like for both of these, I felt like I didn't want to put it down. I just wanted to keep reading to know what was going to happen next. I felt like that sensation of like having so many questions and wanting to know the answers to those questions, and like both of them did such a great job of like revealing things along the way, but every reveal leading to more questions. So like the reasons that I loved both these books are very similar, even though they're very different. Even though my gut feeling is to go with the sci-fi, I actually think 17 Years Later might have been the better book. Like I just think the characters in 17 Years Later felt much more real, and maybe that is the fact that it wasn't speculative, but anyway, I think I felt much more invested in the character's story and the mystery in 17 Years Later. And I think that maybe in The Last Murder at the End of the World, if you really focused on all the details, the plot might not entirely line up, but 17 Years Later, I have faith in J.P. Pomare. Like, that was a great story. So I'm going to pick 17 Years Later. I don't think that's what I expected. Then finally for Q4, we have Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson up against Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie, up against The Book of Koli by M.R. Carey. So firstly, in October, I read Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. I think maybe I'd actually started it in September. Maybe. I took this off my shelf. There's a big gap on my shelf because I took this off the shelf to hold this up, but actually it's way too heavy. I'm not going to bother. Rhythm of War is the 4th book in the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. It's his big epic fantasy. I'm actually in the middle of reading Wind and Truth at the moment as I'm filming this, and probably still for a little while because these are big books. I will say I didn't think Rhythm of War was as good as some of the previous Stormlight Archive books. I did reread the first 3 books in preparation for reading Rhythm of War, and in fact, the last 2 years I've been rereading the whole Cosmere and like filling in the gaps that I'd missed in preparation for reading Rhythm of War. And I am glad I did that because I definitely picked up on a lot of things that I wouldn't have otherwise. But I also think, even though I really love the world building in Rhythm of War, and I like a lot of the characters, and I'm very interested to find out about some of the bigger mysteries of the world, but I do think that Rhythm of War had some pacing problems. Like, there were definitely parts of the plot I really loved, but other parts I thought dragged a little, or I feel like Brandon Sanderson just got a little bit too, I don't know, is it self-indulgent in going into certain details of the magic that he particularly enjoys? But I know there are other people out there who are definitely keen on those parts of the story, but I don't know. I really like Rhythm of War. It's here, best book of the month, so obviously I still liked it, but when I compare it to some of the other books on this list, probably not. And when I compare it to some of the other books on the Stormlight Archives, Probably not. So I'm not going to say that much about this because this is such a popular series and it's so big and complicated that it's hard to describe anyway. But that was the book for October. Then in November I read Ancillary Justice by Leckie. And I loved this. So this is told through two perspectives, or in two timelines. One, we are following the Justice of Turton, who is this AI spaceship who also kind of inhabits the bodies of multiple people. And they are part of this big empire that is colonizing the universe. And they're telling us the story of this particular planet they were colonizing and how things didn't go so well there. And then as well, the other timeline is 2,000 years in the future, where the Justice of Turton now only has one body. They're no longer a spaceship, they're just a single body, and they're basically trying to get revenge for whatever happened 2,000 years in the past. This was so intense and covered so many interesting themes of like class and privilege and civilization and justice. And I loved the themes that it got into. I also just really loved how it messed with perspective. Like in those parts in the past where they're inhabiting multiple bodies, certain scenes will be written like telling you things that are happening in multiple locations at the same time, because that's how the Justice of Turton is experiencing it. And it could be confusing, but it's kind of not. Although parts of this are confusing, I think mainly it doesn't hold your hand a lot in terms of how the culture of this big empire works, and there definitely are a lot of complexities to it. But I love this. I had such a great time with it. It was so action-packed and intense, but also like reflective and thoughtful. Like super great. Then though, December was also a really great read, and that is The Book of Koli by Carey. So this is a post-apocalyptic story where we are following this man named Koli, although he's telling the story of when he was a boy raised in this village. So the post-apocalyptic situation is basically trees became a lot more alive, and if you go out into the trees will attempt to eat you. So as a result, humans are living in these like isolated villages, but they do have like a few remaining pieces of technology. This tech though will only wake for certain people. So when you come of age, you get tested to see if the technology will wake for you. And if it does, you kind of get to become a part of the ruling family. And so Koli's telling the story of kind of his experience with the technology of the world, and I guess his story about learning more about the world that he lives in. And we as the reader learn a lot about the technology that they do have, the remaining technology, and a lot of it does link into kind of the technology of our world, although some of it's a little bit more futuristic maybe, but some of it is definitely tech that we have, and the misunderstanding of these people of that technology is often hilarious. And there's a particular character that gets introduced that I love her so much. She made me laugh all the time. Like, it's a little bit ridiculous, but it was such a fun story that just so unique in the way that the world has been created and the way that it's like using technology. I really loved it. So if we're putting these three books up against each other, we're going to take away Rhythm of War first because I think that's reasonable. Then Ancillary Justice versus The Book of Koli. I really love both of these, and I also read both of these quite recently, so like my love for them is still like filling my heart. How do I decide between Koli and the Justice of Turton? I mean, Koli as a character is much more annoying. He makes a lot of really terrible decisions, whereas the Justice of Turton knows their shit. Like, they know what they're doing. Well, except for if they're expected to know about gender. One thing I loved about Ancillary Justice is because they're a spaceship, they've never really understood gender, and quite often when they're in a single body and they're trying to fake being a human, whenever they have to use someone's pronouns, they're like, ah, shit, I'm going to give myself away as a spaceship because I just don't get it. And also through the whole book, every character is referred to as she, and sometimes it becomes quite clear that they're talking about a male, but they will still continue in their head at least to refer to them as she, even though sometimes if it's been made clear to them that that's wrong, they will use the right pronouns when talking to someone or when referring to that person out loud. In their head, they're always using she for everybody because they just don't get gender. And it's also like a translation thing because I think in the empire that they came from, there aren't really like gendered pronouns. Anyway, I love the way that was done. I love the way so many things were done in Ancillary Justice. I honestly think, even though I love both of these, I think maybe I had more fun with the Book of Koli, but I do think Ancillary Justice was like a bit smarter, and I think the way that it was looking at certain themes was a lot more impactful. So I think for that reason, we're going to pick Ancillary Justice as the best book of Q4. So now let's do best book of the half years. So for the first half of the year, we have The Cursed Princess Club by Lambcat up against Shaman's Crossing by Robin Hobb. I love both of these for such different reasons. Both of them did make me feel emotional, but I think it's like Cursed Princess Club was so much fun and so like hilarious. But then Shaman's Crossing was really like deep and emotional. And I was going to say it had like more serious themes, but maybe it's just that it looked at certain themes more deeply, because Cursed Princess Club definitely had a lot of like, as I said, wholesome messages and like a lot of really important themes about loving yourself and the people around you and like being a good person. I just tried to look at what I rated these books to see if that would give me a clue, but actually all of the books that have won battles in this video, I gave them all 5 stars. I think I just have to make a decision. I think I love the characters for Cursed Princess Club better, and I had a lot more fun with Cursed Princess Club. But, am I saying a but? I think I'm going to go with Shaman's Crossing, just because I really like the depth of that world, the emotional depth. And even though Cursed Princess Club made me emotional, I think Shaman's Crossing, or like the whole of the Soldier Sun trilogy, definitely had bits where like I was devastated by what was happening to Navarre. Like, I think the emotions hit me harder. So we're going to pick Shaman's Crossing as the best book of the first half of the year. Then for the second half of the year, we have 17 Years Later by J.P. Pomare up against Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. And this decision is a little bit easier because even though I love 17 Years Later, it just wasn't as mind-blowing as Ancillary Justice. So Ancillary Justice was definitely the best book of the second half of the year. I'm still thinking about the Book of Koli and whether that was the right decision, but I think so. Let's not second guess ourselves. So that means to decide the best book of the year, we have Shaman's Crossing by Robin Hobb up against Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. How do I make this decision? Part of what makes this decision harder is I did read Ancillary Justice more recently, whereas Shaman's Crossing I read way back in April. And like, I've moved to a whole different city since April. Like, I am not the same person anymore. Do I even remember that life anymore? Oh, not really. But I don't want recency bias to have like too much of an impact on this. Do you know, next year, what I need to arrange is a situation where I do my yearly book battle earlier so that I can reread the best books. I don't have time for that, but that would maybe make the decision easier, or would it make it harder? I don't know. I honestly think that both these books were so emotional and so clever. Maybe I think Ancillary Justice was more clever. Maybe it's just that it's more obviously clever, but Shaman's Crossing I think has a lot of cleverness to it if you were to sit down and analyze the themes and the way they're being expressed. It's definitely true that Shaman's Crossing is a lot slower. That's just the way Robin Hobb is, and like part of how she pulls you into the characters and makes you care about them so that when the awful things happen, it really has an impact on you. But it does take a little while for Shaman's Crossing to get going. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but since we have to make a decision somehow, I think I'm going to use that as an excuse. So, Ancillary Justice is going to be the best book of the year. And the great thing is, I've only read the first 2 books in this trilogy. I still have another one to read. Whereas Soldier Sun trilogy, I'm done with it, and that makes me sad. Anyway, I recommend all the books that I've talked about in this video. Let me know if you've read any of them, because I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments, or let me know if you know what the best book you read in 2024 was, because like, It's a hard decision, right? Or at least it is if you read lots of good books. I'm kind of sad for you if it's an easy decision for you. Unless, of course, it's because you just read something that was so amazing. Anyway, let's chat down in the comments. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.